Hello and welcome to the Music Professor channel. I'm here with Loki. We're going to be talking today, quite a short video, about one of my favourite, if not my favourite composer, Maurice Ravel, and the reason why, it's his 150th birthday. He was born on the 7th of March 1875. And for me, he just represents a pinnacle of human creativity. There's no one more extraordinary than Ravel. The piece we're focusing on, I was playing it just then in a piano arrangement by a friend of Ravel's. The original piece is actually the first piece in a set of miniatures for piano duet, which Ravel wrote for children. It's a children's piece. And the kids were the children of friends of Ravel's called the Godebskis, a Polish family living in Paris in the early years of the 20th century. So this was written in 1908. And like all Ravel's music, this little piece, this wonderful Pavane for Sleeping Beauty, I suppose was written curiously in a sort of way of challenging himself. I think every piece of Ravel's, in a sense, it's a self-imposed challenge where Ravel has to rise to some kind of almost impossible difficulty. If not impossible, certainly very hard. So let me give you an example. One challenge he sets himself is to write an enormous epic pastoral, a sort of huge pastoral ballet with chorus and orchestra, which you already have guessed what I'm talking about, Daphnis and Chloe. I mean, a prodigious and monstrous thing. And yet it's done with such effortless skill and exquisite delicacy, and it's just amazing. Or later in his career, he decides to undertake the composition of piano concertos, which he hasn't done before. The first one is a piano concerto in the spirit of Mozart, a divertimento, amazing magical piece, the G major, which I hope to talk about on the channel sometime. And the other, an extraordinary sort of symphonic poem of a drama, a sort of concealed drama about the First World War, and I think one of the most amazing pieces of music ever composed for left hand and orchestra, such that the left hand, this is the challenge, the left hand is so brilliantly written that you wouldn't really know it was for left hand, but it sounds so sumptuous and resonant. So just taken as a pair, those two concertos, he set himself a sort of impossible challenge. What's another example? The sonata for violin and cello that he wrote. He started writing in 1918 as a memorial after Debussy died. The challenge in that case was, how on earth do you write a sonata for violin and cello that doesn't sound austere and a bit kind of empty? Well, he does it with this magnificent, it almost sounds like a string quartet, these sort of fabulously rich, complex textures that he creates out of the two instruments. What's another example of a challenge? How do you write a piece for violin and orchestra, originally violin and piano, in the Hungarian style and make it sound fresh and invigorated? The Hungarian style had been done to death in the 19th century by Liszt and by Brahms and many other people. How do you make it come alive again? Ravel does it in Tzigane. What's another amazing? And these are all off the top of my head. One more. How do you compose a piece with a single melody that goes round and round? No harmony to speak of, just melody and a sort of pulsing repetitive rhythm. And how do you create a thrilling journey through that piece with just melody and a single sort of pulsing rhythm, using timbre as the primary ingredient? How do you do that? Okay, so the challenge with the great Pavane is how, and remember that Ravel had just written some of the most, if not the most virtuosic piano piece ever composed, and that's Gaspard de la Nuit. The marvellous Miracle of a Piano suite that he wrote in 1908. So the same year, and around the same time, in fact, I'm not quite sure whether this was being written at the same time, but almost to set yourself the challenge. So I'm doing all this wondrous stuff with piano virtuosity. So then, okay, how do you do the opposite? How do you create something absolutely innocent? You know, Gaspard de la Nuit is all sinister and kind of full of mystery and wonderful changes of colour and mysterious darkness and scary things. All of that. It's got a gibbet as the main topic of the middle movement. It's got a terrifying water sprite in it. You know, all these things are there in Gaspard de la Nuit. How do you do the opposite? How do you create a wonderful fairy tale world that's free from any of that horror and is just a sort of innocent, perfect little innocent thing, a children's piece? How do you write something that's as simple as it could possibly be and still write a masterpiece? It's one thing to do that and sort of write a piece as he does with just 2 lines, but how do you make that into something profound and wonderful? Okay, well, how does he do it? He starts off with this beautiful melody and it repeats. So it's a beautiful repeating melody. We're in Aeolian, it's really in the natural minor. But the melody, like as so often in Ravel, is also kind of pentatonic. The pentatonic scale, in other words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, but in the minor, so A minor, but with the pentatonic scale doing that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so here he starts off with a sort of a pentatonic melody over I'll just play the melody. Beautiful. The triad of A minor, and then it dips down to the modal 7th G and repeats. And then the second phrase is like an answer to the first. And that's a pattern you get through the piece. In other words, a repeating bar and then a sort of 2-bar answer. You could say A, B, if you like. And underneath that, this lovely leaping 7th, but so, like a lullaby, so innocent. And then for the second phrase, just climbing up to the E and then these 3 simple bass notes. So altogether we've got and they converge on that E, and and there's that sense of where do we go now? He's taken you to that place, and it's Sleeping Beauty. You know, Sleeping Beauty in the wood. She's there somewhere in the wood. You'll find Sleeping Beauty if you go into it. Off you go, children. So it's got this wonderful melancholy and innocence, and then what next? This happens. This wonderful answer, pianissimo. And it cadences in A minor. Now, you weren't expecting that. Of course you were, because you probably know it. But isn't it amazing the way it opens out from a simple mid-range 2-part texture, and then he does this sort of magical thing. He opens a window. Do you remember we talked about windows opening a couple of videos ago when we looked at Augmented Sixth? If you haven't seen that video, have a look at it. Opening a window, you open a window into a different sonority, a different kind of resonance, a different kind of harmony, because we're in 4 parts now, and we've got this ting, ting, this lovely little tolling bell on the D. We've got a pentatonic tune, just like the opening melody, a sort of inversion of the opening melody going the other way, also pentatonic, also A minor, just over the tolling bell. So pretty. Repeating phrase, and then the answering phrase, just like the opening. So it's wonderfully symmetrical in a sense with the opening, but the texture's completely different. The opening was sort of dry, no pedal, just 2 parts. Now it's full of pedal, and it's got the third voice in the left hand. Do you look at that lovely chromaticism, so that there's a slightly, there's definitely a mystery there. She's in the forest, deep in the forest. The chromaticism, beautiful chromaticism, and then the dissonance of the E, 2.5 octaves below that. Isn't that amazing? Who else could come up with that? And incidentally, this has a lot to do with spacing. Those of you who might be composers out there, if you space that chord, if you'd done this, I mean, it would be nice, but it wouldn't have the magic that it has because of the registers that he's chosen. So lovely. And then, third time, it cadences. Lovely modal, sort of quite dark modal dissonant cadence to A minor. Little middle phrase. Again, a repeating phrase in two parts initially. So it repeats, but on the repeat, the bass comes in. I should just say the top two parts are moving together until they reach this lovely, warm, kind of Tierce to Picardy, A major going to the seventh. It's an amazing moment when that C sharp happens. But then the magic is then added to with a third voice coming in, a sort of baseline-y sequence, a sequence of fifths, a drop of a fifth, another fifth, and another one, and another one. So these fifths give it a sense of direction going to that A, doesn't it? The fifths, it's like someone sort of walking into the forest. Beautiful. And there's the, oh God, that's amazing. That's C sharp. So we go, wow, that C sharp happens. And then the turn to the minor, isn't that magnificent? C sharp, A minor, and then look at this magic again. He doesn't just, he could have just gone and sort of stayed in the tonic. Boring. Of course, he can't do that. But look at the magic of this. He goes up to D, the subdominant. We've got a sort of recap of the opening, but it feels transformed because the harmony's transformed. Originally it was in A minor. Now it's D minor with a ninth. And look at you've got the D in the bass. Do you remember that D in the second phrase? The little D pulsing along. Now the D's in the bass. And we got a little F in the alto part also pulsing. And then look at this tenor line. We looked at Bach chorales in the last video. This is like a chorale, this moment, and it doesn't sound like Bach, but it's just as good. Look at that tenor part. Now, that kind of mirrors the second phrase. Do you remember the way that the second phrase, this chromatic figure moved around it sort of moved up and down like little waves. Well, here it's doing the opposite. The tenor part is diatonic, not chromatic, and it moves down. And we have a sort of duet between treble and tenor. And poised over the subdominant, and then we arrive on E5, just an open E and B. And look, the magic returns, but pianissimo this time, with the 4-part texture. And the cadence. And it couldn't be simpler, but how amazing it is. Now, I'm playing a piano arrangement by a friend of Ravel's. In a moment, you'll hear the original duet version as he wrote it for his friends, the Godepsky children. And one last thing to say, Ravel orchestrated this in the most amazing way. I'm sort of thinking I'd like to do a longer video about that orchestration, so do leave your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about Ravel? Only positive things. No, just what do you think about Ravel? How does his music reach out to you? Why is his music so special? Lots of answers to that question, but I'll be delighted to read your comments. And thank you for watching.